Hi, welcome to Danette Gets Creative. I'm Danette. Cool new little video I'm excited to share with you. Found these little patterns online. So I just went online, Googled free house patterns. I think this actually was a gingerbread house, but it doesn't matter. I printed it and then I cut it out and glued it onto a harder cardstock so that I could trace around each of the pieces. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just tracing it on a scrap piece of felt. And the reason why I'm going to do it on felt is I want to use the felt as a base for fabric to go on top of. Because I think that fabric would be a little too lightweight to keep the structure of the house. So first step for me was to create this base fabric of felt and cut out the shapes. And then I have this cute little fabric pack. I don't remember where I got it, but it's shades of brown. And I'm just going to go through and choose the materials I want for the sides, the front, the roof. And then what I do, as you'll see here, is I take my fabric and I put it face down. And I'm just using some school glue, some glue stick, and I'm putting it onto the material and I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch. I didn't measure, but I'm leaving enough of an edge that I can use it to fold over and stitch. For this particular house that I'm going to create, I'm going to have nice finished edges, but in the future I want to do the same procedure and the same technique, process, whatever you want to call it. And what I want to do is I want to create it with raw edges. So you'll see here in this video, I fold over the edges and I just do a little finger press. And I'm just going to whip stitch down the edges so that I have completed edges, finished edges. And I'm going to do that with all of my pieces, the sides and the roof. And I'm going to then come back. Excuse me, let's see here, what am I doing? Oh, right, I'm doing my corners here. Just going to do a quick little corner here, continue whip stitching around. Finger pressing. I'm sure if you're someone who likes to iron, you could put a really good crease in there and iron it all, but I'm not one of those people. I'm not taking the time to iron everything. So whip stitch around, and then I'm going to assemble the house. And my thought is with this house is that I will embellish it with materials. I will do embroidery, and I want to just create some decoration and some interest in the house. And then my intention is to use it as a pincushion. This house isn't very big. It ends up being about 3 inches square, maybe. I want to actually, if everyone's enjoying this, please let me know in the comments. What I actually want to do is create some different houses, different styles. I'm from the east coast of Canada in Nova Scotia. I'm not currently living there now, but I'm from the east coast, and a big part of the culture and way of life there is lighthouses. So I was thinking that I could even create a lighthouse. Part of my other family is from the Netherlands. They're Dutch, so maybe a windmill. And I just want to create some different houses, and not all for the purpose of pincushions. I've done a little look on Pinterest, and I've seen people turn them into door stoppers. I've seen them just use as decorations. So I think that I'm going to go down a new little rabbit hole here and going to start creating some houses. So if you enjoy this one, stick with me and maybe you'll see some other ones of interest. So what I'm doing right now is I finished all 4 of my sides and the roof. And what I'm doing is I'm attaching them all together. So I've put the 2 right sides together and I'm doing a small whip stitch around the edge to attach the 2 pieces. So you'll see here in a second, I will open it up and I'll show you how the 2 pieces are connected and how tiny the stitches are. So just finish off my edge here, open it up, And there it is. So what I'll do is I'll continue to sew the 4 pieces together, following the same process, right sides together, and a whip stitch along the edges, nice and close, tiny little stitches, so that when you open it, the stitches are close together and that there's no big openings. So there's the 4 sides, all glued to, or all sewn together. And now what I'm working on is a door. So I just cut out the brown door to the shape I want. I chose a rounded door, but you certainly could use a rectangle. And then I just put the gray felt behind to create maybe the brick look or a layered look. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 strands of brown embroidery floss. And what I'm doing here is I'm just doing, oops, got a knot. Of course I've got a knot. Wouldn't be a video if I didn't have a knot. And of course it wouldn't be a video if I didn't unthread my needle, because that's one of the biggest challenges I have is threading my needle. So what I end up doing is I end up using this this brown, my goodness, I'm struggling for words tonight. I end up using this brown embroidery floss just to go around with a simple running stitch to stitch down the door. So all the way around so that it will be attached to the main part of the house. What you're also going to see is I'm going to take the time to put, of course, another knot. I'm going to take the time to put lines in the door to create the look of wood boards in the door. I add a little handle to the door, all just little details to finish off the project and finish off the door and give it some interest. I'm having a really fun time with it. I'm so glad that I came up with this idea to go down the rabbit hole of making houses. It was so much fun. As I was creating this house, I came up with more ideas of ways of embellishing, things I could do with it, shapes I could create, tall and skinny houses, crooked houses, bird houses, the whole bit, gingerbread houses. All these ideas are in my mind now, so I think it's important that I get a notebook and start writing down all my ideas before I forget what they all were. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in seeing more houses, stick with me because I think this has just opened a doorway for more and more creation on this channel. So I'm just going to finish up sewing down the door, and you're going to see in the next little clip here that it's going to have all its details. And what I'm going to do now is I've taken some strands of wool. Don't quite know what kind of wool it is, it's just in my stash, but I have 4 or 6 strands, I can't quite remember here. And what I've done, I've just whip stitching it on to the base of the house. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these pieces of wool to create a tree. And I'm going to make the tree go over the top of the door and onto the one side of the house. So I'm just couching over the strands of brown wool. And you'll see here in a moment that I'm going to separate the strands, and then I'll know how many I have. How many do I have? 4. Separate the strands, and that way I'm going to make one strand a little bit of a thinner branch. Again, couching it down, kind of following the rounded arch of the doorway. And then I'm going to separate that out to be 2 more branches. And from those 2 branches, I'm going to make single little twigs. So we're doing a little twist, couching them down. You're going to see that I come in with another needle, just whatever random needle I had on my desk there. And I'm going to take that needle, thread these single strands that I've created there, and poke them down so that they're on the back and I can knot them off. So those just kind of make the single twig ends to the branches. So there we go. Separate this out as well. Do the same thing. Create those little final twiggy branches at the end of the branch. One more. There we go. I will continue along till you see the full tree there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 shades, a dark, a medium, and a light. So I have a darker pinkish color, a lighter pink, and just an off-white color. What I've done is I've separated it into 2 strands. So it was the 6-stranded cotton. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create French knots. So French knots in the dark color. And then I'm going to go in with a lighter color. And then finally, actually go in with a medium color. And then finally I'm going to go in with a lighter color. I apologize for any blurry moments that might happen when I zoom in and zoom out. And sometimes when my hand comes close to the camera, it creates those little blurry moments. I try my best to be aware of it, but there are a few here and there, so I apologize for those. Continue with the French knots. I'm wrapping it 4 times. And I'm just putting them in random spots. I have no real plan on where they're going. Sometimes I'm putting them in 2s. Sometimes I'm putting them as singles. It's up to you. Just kind of going wherever I feel like I want to plop my needle in there and drop a French knot. So there you go. Oh, focus, there you go. Little tiny French knots. Kind of creating the blossom look. Tree's done, which you'll see here in a moment. And what I'm doing now is I used an off-white color and I'm going to create a window on the smaller side. I'm trying to figure out if I want to do the window on the big one as well. But what I do end up doing, and you'll see here in a moment, is I put 1 window on the smaller side. And then I put 2 bigger windows on the other side. So I have an off-white floss. I've separated it into 2 strands. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the window by doing a blanket stitch. And I'm making my blanket stitches pretty close together and pretty tiny because I don't want them to take up the whole window. So just going to blanket stitch all the way around the window. Tiny little ones. Pulling it down. You're going to see here in a moment that I will have this one sewn down, and you'll also see that I put 2 windows on the bigger part of the house. And in the next little clip here, you're going to see after I get these windows down, you're going to see that I go in with another color. I would say a very, very light brown. There you go. There's the stitches. And now you can see that I have all 3 windows down. And now I've gone in with another color of brown, just a little bit lighter, like maybe a beige. And what I'm doing is I'm creating the window panes. So I'm, oh, another knot, of course there's a knot. You can see that I'm making my window and dividing it into 3 panes. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to make another stitch horizontally to create the 6 tiny windows. And I end up going around the window because I felt it wasn't finished. So I end up framing the window as well with this same color. So doing the 2 short sides and doing the 2 long sides. But I also found that the long sides, or the longer length of stitching, was kind of loose, and I was concerned that I was going to get caught in things and snagged on things. So what you'll see here is I go in with, there's my window, I go in with a single strand of the same color and another needle And I'm just going to tack down in spots where those long sides meet the smaller sides. And it's almost like putting just a little diagonal line across where all of the pieces of thread meet. Another knot, of course. And it's just a way of making the window a little more secure, and nothing's going to get snagged and rip it out. I do the same process on the 2 windows that I created at the back of the house. So there we go, finished window. Back 2 windows are done. And now what I have is I have a green piece of floss, and I believe I left it 3 strands. It's thicker anyway. And what I'm doing here is I'm just starting at the bottom and doing short and long stitches, straight or diagonal. And what I'm doing is I'm just creating grass and stems for flowers. I only do this just on the back window just to give the back piece of the house some interest. So I just go all the way across with the green. Long ones, short ones, straight ones, crooked ones. There we go, almost done. Such a fun project. I've really enjoyed doing it. I'm sitting here watching it and doing this voiceover part. As I'm watching it, my mind is just spinning with more and more possibilities and more ideas. I didn't even pull out my buttons, and I didn't even pull out my lace. Can you imagine the possibilities with that? So there we go, grass stems. And I've pulled out my little tiny seed beads, my little tiny beading needle, and a single strand of thread. And I'm going to put the bead on with 1 stitch, and I'm going to go back and give it a 2nd stitch. That way I know it's secure, and it also lays a little bit flatter. Oh, good, all knotted up there. This is the video of knots, my goodness. There we go. 1 flower. And I'm just going to go in and choose a different color. And I'm just going to create flowers across the bottom. I am not putting a bead on every stem because that would be a lot of flowers, kind of alternating between the tall ones and the small ones. And again, 2 stitches in each bead, just to make it secure and to hold it down better. There we go, 2. How cute is that? And I'm just choosing random colors. I'm literally sticking my needle in there, and whatever bead color I get is the bead color I get. Of course, you always find one that's too small. There we go, that one fits. 1 stitch, 2 stitches, nice and secure. Sometimes you'll see, like I did right there, I'll put a single stitch in to the material before I even get the bead. And I think it's just an extra way of adding some security so that if one of the threads broke, all of the beads wouldn't come off. Here we go, cute little flowers. Flowers are finished. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same whip stitch that you watched me do earlier, and now all the sides will be attached. So quick little whip down the side here. Whoops, bumped the camera, sorry for that. Stitching down the side, attaching it all together so that I have the structure ready to add the roof to. Go. Doing that tiny little whip stitch. This whip stitch is a little different because it is all on the outside, where before we had right sides together. That's why I'm choosing to do it really small, because this one's going to be seen more than the other ones. Almost there. Of course, unthreaded my needle. Just my luck. Perfect. I'm going to knot it off. Then I'm going to show you how to put on the roof. There it is. There's the structure. There's the roof. Threading my needle. And what I'm doing is I'm aligning up the peak with the fold of the roof. And again, just whip stitching. I'm whip stitching and I'm sewing from the peak down on one side. And then I go back up and I go from the peak down to the other side. And then I do the same. I go onto the back and I start with the peak and I go down one side. And then I go from the peak down to the other side. And the reason why I'm starting at the peak and going down is because the roof is longer than the front triangle shape of the house, because it's creating that overhang that lots of houses have on them. And you'll see how I sort out that overhang here shortly. So again, like I said, start at the peak, go down one side, tie off your thread, go back up to the peak, and stitch down the second side. So again, just a tiny little whip stitch, lining up the two pieces together, whip stitching along. There we go. Halfway there. Such a fun project. I don't know how many times I've said that in this video. You're probably tired of me saying it. I really enjoyed making it. It's actually fun watching it be made as I'm going through this video again. Okay, all done. Knot it off. I'm choosing to knot it off on the inside. That way you won't have to see any knots on the outside. There's the front. Do the same in the back. And then you can see the overhang. Now what I'm doing is I'm stitching underneath the overhang of the roof and the sides of the roof. And again, it's just a whip stitch, just a teeny tiny little stitch, attaching the sides of the house to the roof of the house. I'm going to do that on both sides so that you can see the overhang. Almost there. It doesn't fit perfectly, but unless you're looking really close, no one's ever going to see that it's not perfect. And in the slow stitch, hand stitch world, is there anything that's perfect? No, I don't think so. There you go. You can see the overhang on the first side there. Give it a little trim. Same thing on the second side. Line the underside up with the side of the house. And there it is, our roof on a house. My base, I didn't do any fabric on my base. I left my base just as felt. Sewed around 3 of the sides. Left the 4th side mostly open. And now I'm just going to stuff it. And I don't currently have any of the crushed walnuts or any of those plastic beads or anything to put in it for weight. But I think it'd be a great idea to stuff the top part with this fiber, with the stuffing, and then put some weight to the bottom so that it would sit a little firmer on your desk. So that's something for next time. This time, the house is just getting some stuffing. Stuff it as firm as you want. When you're happy with it, sew up the bottom. Close it up. I'll show you here in a moment the finished house and what it looks like and how I turn it into a pin cushion. And then I wasn't completely finished. I wanted to have a house number So I went through my stash and I went to the salvage edges of some of my materials. And on the salvage end, where sometimes you see the person who created, the author or the illustrator or the creator or the artist, whatever you want to call them, whoever created the material and the name they gave them, sometimes that's written down the side. You will also see the colorway that's been used down the side. And sometimes in that colorway, you see numbers. So I went through my stash, found one of those salvage ends, and you'll see here in a moment that I cut up one of the numbers and I sew it onto the front of the house so that the house has a house number. I just felt it was missing something. And when I came across the idea of adding the number, I think it totally finished it off. Let me know what you think in the comments. So here we are, finishing off the house. Showing you all four sides. Popping a few pins in to make it an actual pin cushion. There it is. Again, I thought I was missing something, so hold on. Here we go. You're going to see in this next little clip. There it is. There's those salvage edges that are on the edge of lots of pieces of material. I don't know why I chose the number 2. I just did. Cutting it out, fraying the edges a little bit. I said, no, too high. I give it another teeny tiny little trim. There we go. And I put it lower in between the tree branches. And I go around it with a little bit of thread and I stitch it down. And I absolutely love this house. I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, I'm so excited about it that I want to make more. So stick around. Let me know what you think. Hope you give it a try. Take care. See you soon. Happy stitching. Bye.